So you get like these people that are like in their 30s and 40s that are watching, but they're not going to leave a comment on it. Even when we first started Yamama as a YouTube channel, I mean, like when you get into like anything that's like jump scare, horror stuff, anything that can like drive up adrenaline, that's where it starts to kind of go up higher in age rating. And then you got these people that are like playing this game and cursing as they're like they're freaking the fuck out. It was one of those things where if I went back, I would have clothed them up because it's not what I asked for, but I definitely made a final say on it, and I should have gone back and asked for them to be fully clothed.
Wait, one with an S. One's 8 years ago, and one's 11 years ago.
Yeah, the one that's 11 years ago would be the first upload.
Okay. So is the point you're making that it won't get recommended to children? Is that the point you're making?
Okay. Hello, guys.
Hello.
So for this part of things, I'm going to, I'm going to be here and make sure, Einat's a really fair guy. He's a really chill guy. So I'm not anticipating anything being crazy or
Just
debate
a
broy
chill
or
guy.
anything. But I'm here, as a, moderation slash, whatever guy, just to make sure we stay on track. And, but I'll let Einat kind of lead this.
All right, cool. And just to make sure, is your name Einat or Enut?
Yeah, it's iNut, like an iPhone, But just
Okay.
iNut. Yeah, new Apple product coming down the line, But yeah, I do want to point out, rolling into it, that your content is something that I had seen whenever I was like a teenager, like 14 to like 17, so like high school. So it's like I'm not unaware of the content, and at the time I thought it was pretty funny. So with that, I'm thankful that you're willing to have me on and talk about this. So,
Yeah, totally. I would imagine we might have some slight disagreements, but whenever I do have a disagreement, I just want you to know, like, I will also acknowledge what you're saying with respect. So, like, I hope it's a good conversation overall, and that doesn't seem like I'm shutting you down.
thank you. And I don't intend to rehash like anything Himpleton said so far. I think your response to Red has been very good, in terms of how how it's been framed and how they misconstrued it, whether it was Red or Izzy. So I have nothing to hit on with that. Um, but I guess just as a personal question before I get into like the whole like content slash audience section of the doc, how did you get the Avicii collab?
Dude, that was so random. They
Yeah, no, I was like dumbfounded when I saw that. Like
no,
I found it like a couple months ago and I sent it to Himpleton.
yeah. So basically, God, from my personal perspective, I knew about the "Wake Me Up" song. Um, I was sitting in a how do I explain it? We're sitting like in a hotel in Aspen. We would do like this yearly Aspen trip for like snowboarding. And I woke up. I had my Big Mac open up, checking business emails, and I turned to the guys. And I'm like, "Hey, who's?" And I spelled out the name. Like, who the hell is Avicii? And they're like, "Yeah, you know the song 'Wake Me Up.'" I'm like, "Yeah." Okay, well, Universal Music Group wants us to do like a music video collaboration of his "Wake Me Up" remix, and so they had reached out to us when we did that.
So it is pretty cut and dry then.
Yeah, they I know they reached out to Frederator Network at the same time, and Frederator Network was like, "Yeah, we can't animate anything." I know they reached out to Joe Penna, Mr. Guitar Man. I think it was his name. And they reached out to somebody else, a Lego animator, who they removed the music video from, and I don't know why, but yeah, they reached out to four of us at the same time.
That's fair. With I feel like with the animation industry, it's like it's kind of like the whoever does it, I guess. First come. So that makes sense. So to kind of lead into what I want to talk about though, I guess with like at the peak of your channel, would you say like what age range do you think was predominantly watching your content?
Can you just find the peak?
I guess like peak views, like just at the time the content was like most well spread, if that makes sense. Before I guess going into compilation style content like it is now.
Yeah. So I would say it was a pretty diverse audience. As I spoke with him on Sunday, basically, when you have like a really diverse audience, you have like those that watch your content and don't necessarily leave comments, and then you have people that watch your content and leave comments, right? And typically on the YouTube platform, you have a younger audience that's going to be more engaged by leaving comments, right? So that's why I would see a lot of like, I'll never forget, like, I'll see all these comments coming in for like Paw Patrol, Yo Mama jokes. I'm like, we're not going to touch Paw Patrol. That's like a preschool thing that's pretty recent. And obviously, that's like a really younger audience that's coming in. But from an overall perspective, like, Yo Mama is not a YouTube for Kids app content pipeline. Like, it doesn't get served on that application. So what you end up getting is you get like a lot of younger people that are more engaged with the YouTube platform that engage with you in terms of comments. But when you start to look at it from like a an overall demographic perspective, it's really wide ranging. So you get like these people that are like in their 30s and 40s that are watching, but they're not going to leave a comment on it. Even when we first started Yo Mama as a YouTube channel, and people like would recognize us for Yo Mama content, it was like a lot of college guys, like people that were like in fraternities and stuff. There was a lot of there's like a lot of people in like mid 20s to late 20s that were really engaged with it. That would like reach out to me as fans on different platforms, or would engage with us personally about it. Uh, so I think when you asked me like what was the peak demo during the peak time, the demo was wide ranging. But when you look at like what who leaves comments, it's definitely like younger people because they're the ones that are going to actually leave comments on YouTube.
Okay, well, is it fair to say though that you are were highly aware of having a younger audience by including like Lego characters like Baldi's Basics, that kind of stuff in the content?
I would say more of an autistic audience.
Okay, despite those being child themes, but yeah,
Well, I mean that's a framing of a generalized exceptions, so that's like not a framing I normally agree with. What I mean
I
by
mean
like
even
having an
in Five Nights
autistic
at Freddy's as
audience.
well to throw that in as well.
Yeah, but just so you know, like a lot of these properties have a mixed range of demographics. And you can see that
Of
through,
course, yeah.
like, I mean, when you have like people cursing at Friday Nights at Freddy's because they're like getting scared and shit, things of that nature. It's like how I reflect back on like me being like a 12-year-old watching Adult Swim. Like, yeah, a lot of younger people watch Adult Swim, but obviously it was not made for those folks. Or you look at Robot Chicken and how they would tap into a lot of intellectual properties that were aimed at younger kids, like Sesame Street, and then they would like flip it into like more adult oriented parodies that were still accessible to a younger audience.
Well, I would counter that just in the aspect of that it's availability, right? Any kid can boot up YouTube and get an animation recommended to their page, and they see, Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria on the thumbnail, and it's like, oh, hey, it's my favorite character from Markiplier's videos. Versus Robot Chicken, like that was like if I watched as a teenager, it was like late at night on the weekends, like
Not
midnight.
necessarily. YouTube would push that content out a lot on their front page. Um, and then ultimately what you do have is you do have these two different platforms, right, that are catered towards a general YouTube audience and what they called YouTube for Kids. And a lot of people, when they bring up ElsaGate, they don't realize that ElsaGate wasn't just simply utilizing Spider-Man, Joker, Elsa, in a weird ass orgy and everyone's getting pregnant. No, these were videos that were able to get onto the YouTube for Kids app because they knew how to get around those algorithm metrics or those parental guidelines, if you will. So when you create ElsaGate content, you made sure that ElsaGate content actually got on YouTube for Kids. Whereas YouTube
Because it's
always
how to get all the
acknowledged.
views, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, even though the RPM might be lower, uh, when you see these videos with millions of views and only like a dozen comments, that's why, because you're not allowed to comment under YouTube for Kids. Whereas like YouTube always recognized Your Mama as a more mature channel. And because of that, we were never under YouTube for Kids.
I mean, I suppose not being on YouTube for kids, I mean that's fair to an extent, but again, I think boiling down again the use of like FNAF, Baldi's, the third one I brought up earlier, I'm drawing a blank. Boiling it down to like an autistic audience, I think is a cheap way. I don't want to say you're dismissing it, but I think there is like some extent where like it is targeting children. I mean, to the point you did say the part of what is it, the like younger audience being in the comments. So I don't think it's worth staying on the topic of this, but I do want to put that out there though.
Well, and then that kind of argument would be, there's a reason why we didn't do Paw Patrol videos, right? Like we knew that was like a strictly kids thing. Whereas like FNAF or like Minecraft, you begin to realize there is a wider demographic audience there. So when I
Yeah,
say
but
like an autistic
like even pointing
audience,
it out
so when I say
like
like an
as a
autistic
kid,
audience, it's more so like you got these people that are like, they're younger adults,
hyper-fixated on
or
like
they
child interest.
no, just hyper fixated on what they do.
Kind
Like
of like
I
Disney adults.
well, it's like I collect Transformers, right? But would you consider Transformers a child IP?
I would say so, just based off the cartoons. I mean, yeah, you have like more
Okay.
mature movies, but like people, I would say like because I would assume you're like in your 30s, um, your age would be more into the cartoon, not so much the movies from like the mid 2000s.
Yes and no. The point being is like when you grow up on an intellectual property like Transformers, Pokemon, He-Man, etc., you grow up on that going into like your 20s, 30s, and 40s, and you still activate with it as an adult. So you can have these more adult theme IPs that kind of grow up with you to an extent, but or you might have like a nostalgic like recognition of that. So like when you go back and look at volume one of Yo Mama, one of the jokes that we did was Your Mama's so ugly, not even Bob the Builder can fix her, right? Now that could be argued from your perspective that was aimed towards kids. But most people would go, well, no, that's not aimed towards kids. That's aimed towards people that grew up with that as a kid show. And so they're using it as a nostalgic, like, joking point. So it gets kind of tricky to where, like, I think Paw Patrol, like, you and I could agree on that any day of the week. That's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
kid's
but
thing, right?
to
But when you start to get into, like, things like Transformers or SpongeBob or things that were, like, exclusively to the 90s and then you kind of grew up on it from a nostalgic standpoint, you realize there's, like, a wider demographic there.
and that's it's fair, but going back to because right, I should look at your channel. Like Five Nights at Freddy's trailer one for or like you announced you're making Five Nights at Freddy's content. Um, what let me see the date on this. May 24th, 2015. Less than a year after Five Nights at Freddy's 1 came out. Again, I was in high school when Five Nights at Freddy's 1 came out, so that was a very big thing amongst my demographic at the time, and it still is a big thing in the demographic of children, right? I have like nieces, nephews that love the IP, right?
Exactly.
Um,
But it's also
so
like a big
I
demographic
get your
for like
point.
older
I
folks.
get your point of pointing out like again things like Bob the Builder, SpongeBob, being older topics, but there are these topics that you know are fresh. And sure, it's not going to make its way to the YouTube Kids app. However, most kids don't just use the YouTube Kids app because it's 90 like percent baby content, right? Nieces, nephews, I'm not their parents, right? I don't control how they what content they indulge themselves in, right? If I see them watching something that's they shouldn't be watching, obviously I'm gonna step in as like their uncle. Um, but right, like they're most of the time, I don't think I've ever seen any of them use YouTube Kids, like in some of them being younger than 10. Um, sure, that may be on the parents, but it's still the application they're using. And I feel like that's very common amongst most young kids. None of them are really using YouTube Kids.
It's the same way with my little
So,
siblings. I will say that. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas like my
but
family,
I understand
they're
that.
very like they're very weird about like making sure like their kids are watching only YouTube for kids stuff. I mean, like when you get into like anything that's like jump scare horror stuff, anything that can like drive up adrenaline, that's where it starts to kind of go up higher in age rating. And then you got these people that are like playing this game and cursing as they're freaking the fuck out. Now, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with everything that you're saying, but what I am providing is a greater scope of perspective on the fact that you cannot just nail down a a demographic with these things unless you actually have like research data audience that can show it, right? And when I say like as an autistic audience, what I'm talking about is like, yeah, you do have these people that kind of grow up on this type of stuff, and they latch onto a lot of these kind of themes, if you will, where they do like animatronics, they do like um, cringy, ironic gameplay, and you realize that okay, that's like a later teen, early 20s demographic that really gets involved into it. Now, do I disagree with what you're saying? No, I don't disagree with it. I'm just giving a different perspective on it, which I think you and I could align with.
Yeah, overall point I was just trying to get to is like your acknowledgement of the fact that there was a, I would say, a dominant child audience. I wouldn't say it was, or I wouldn't say it's dominant, but there is a very noticeable child audience when it comes to your content. That's the main point of what I'm getting at with this. And
It's
I'm not trying to get you in a
noticeable when you
gotcha.
look. Well, just so you know, like if you look at like any of the other platforms, you can see like a vastly different demographic, right? So, like I said, like younger people are going to be more engaged on YouTube. They're just the
Yeah.
type of people who leave a comment on YouTube. They're not the type of people to really engage with like an Instagram post or a Facebook post. And when you look at like engaged audience versus like digestible audience or the people that like actually watch the content, you realize it's a far greater demographic overall. So yeah, I agree what you're saying to the extent of regarding like, yeah, if you're younger, you're going to be more active in the comments on YouTube.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Because you're a lot like more susceptible to like putting your opinion out there versus an adult, you realize no one really cares, right? Um,
To some extent, I
so
think it comes down to like whether or not like what do you engage with daily on a platform as an adult. You know, not many adults leave comments on YouTube versus like leaving a comment on
like
TikTok or
screen.
Instagram or Facebook. Though I will say
Yeah,
TikTok's a pretty diverse audience too.
yeah. So I guess like to continue the conversation because I think we're at a good point with that. Um, so when it came to your content, were you kind of like the final say on what got released? To kind of loop back to what you mentioned about the Lego orgy, um, and how Red just kind of threw that in there. That wasn't like something that you even knew about, that you didn't ask for, and it was just in there. And you're like, well, it's okay enough to put on the platform. So are you the
In those
final authority
situations,
though in releasing content though?
so yes and no, because like you got to look at it from like when I worked with my co-producer and co-business partner at the time. So like in those years, him and I would have to come to like a sort of agreement, right? Before we move forward with anything. Where it's like years after, yeah, I was final stay or final say.
Okay. So, I guess could you give me some examples of content that you weren't the final say on, where it's like kind of everyone else is like, "Hey, this is good," and you were kind of iffy on it, but you decided to put it out anyways.
Um, I would say probably like the easiest thing to point back to would be like the anime rap battles. So that was a project that my co-producer came up with at the time. He led that project. I did some writing for season one, and then I did secure the budget for season two, and gave some creative notes to work off of. So it comes down to like, in that case scenario, it's like that's this project, right? I have my notes, I have my thoughts, I have my feedback, but ultimately what he uploads there is uploaded by him. And then when you look at like the Five Nights at Freddy's thing that we did, which is like probably about 6 minutes long, that was funded by Frederator Network. Um, that had like a lot of input from a lot of different people, but Alex and I were like final say on that. Um, and then there were definitely episodes where we worked together where we're like, okay, well, you know what? This is your episode. I'll let you have final say on it, and vice versa. But then we would like kind of agree, like, okay, well, we should like talk about this together. Where it's a little bit longer. And then probably one of the things that I had final say on where I would have come back and done it differently would be your mom is so evil. She didn't whip you with a belt, she whipped you with a whip. I wasn't expecting a naked Brody model.
Oh, is that the
Uh,
one in the doc that's referenced, like the thumbnail of it?
oh, I don't know.
Uh,
Yeah, I
uh,
think it is. It's
Templeton, if
Yo
I
Mama
feel
So
it's
Rich,
the second
Grounded. Yeah, Yo Mama So Rich, Grounded.
with Brody with his pants like down his thighs, getting
Down.
his ass whipped.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where like I wasn't like I got it back. I'm like, I'm not really sure about this, but if
Oh, so you
YouTube,
received it and he was fully nude,
yeah,
like initially. Okay.
yeah, and I was remember thinking to myself like, okay, well, we should clothe him up, but this is like a unique asset position. I don't know how. It was one of those things where if I went back, I would have clothed him up because it's not what I asked for, but I definitely made a final say on it, and I should have gone back and asked for him to be fully clothed, or at least something like having like boxer briefs on or something easy.
Okay. Um, so I mean, you answered it with Hamilton. But with again, I guess sexual innuendos and references, I believe are okay. As you said, there's references and jokes in like all of kids media, to that, like early SpongeBob having it, everything, right? Um, but there's still more that there's some that's not as much on the nose, and it's very like forward. Um, like looking back at it, is that stuff that you think would still like or was appropriate? Uh,
Can you
despite having a larger
can you
child audience.
can you give an example?
Let me see. At one moment. I mean, just to the things of like again, all the characters twerking, that being I think it was like what Big Chungus, all that. More lewd looking things in the thumbnails, and then including, and I guess it's a more so recent thing, but including like the more sexual anime type things in your content. So
Yeah,
if you
so
want to
like the
reference, I guess thumbnails easily. Thumbnails are
so
an
I
easy
think
thing
the
to reference for
twerking
that.
thing is like such an odd conversation because it's one of those things where like you look at SpongeBob, you look at Teen Titans Go, they all have twerking scenes, right? That was literally like an actual like viral tweet this past week where a mom was like, "Why is there like a twerking Robin from Teen Titans Go as a toy?" So these are elements that other shows are using. They're,
But does that make it right?
I mean, it's
It's
not for
like
me to say.
again,
I mean, that's the framing
I
of the
like
conversation where like,
as a parent myself, it's like when my daughter gets older, do I want her seeing cartoon characters shaking ass on one of the biggest cartoon channels? No.
well, that's you
Um,
as a parent. But like when you're
yeah, but
asking me like,
I'm
is that?
saying like
But you're asking me a
that's
question
a
like
sexually
where you're like,
provocative dance.
you're asking me, is
So,
that right? That's framing it as a way to where like I'm the person creating these standards and I don't, right? So like when you frame things like, do you think or don't you think this or is that right? It creates the notion that everyone agrees on that argumentative point, and not everyone agrees on that argumentative point. What I can acknowledge is that these are elements that are being shown up in other kids shows where they do have all these standards of safety departments that are in place to like review this and they still sign off on it. So if I as the Yamama channel am creating like a twerking rabbit and then you have a Cartoon Network show and a Nickelodeon show creating like a twerking Rob and a twerking SpongeBob and you're asking me if that's right, that's alluding to the idea that somehow I'm the one creating the standard and I'm not. The
so
reality is
I
that
mean,
these are cartoon elements. These are cartoon shows written by adults, and adults do put in things that they think are funny. Now, as you as a parent, you're right. Like you do have that responsibility to decide whether or not your kids watch this stuff. And I think that's a great responsibility to uphold and have. But I'm not the
just
person that
putting
sets
it
these
on the network's
standards.
shoulders though, saying that they have all these people in place that make sure this doesn't happen. Because someone in chat brought up the great point, right? You looking at Dan Schneider for Nickelodeon, right? He implemented his foot fetish into a lot of things
Oh yeah.
alongside with the children. So I don't think it is a valid argument to say that these execs, the people running these channels, are thinking, yeah, let's put these in shows. It's okay. I think because again, yeah, the scope of content is there, right? Your channel has big reach. Used to have a far bigger reach. That's not an insult. Um, but the point I'm making with that is that you as an individual, smaller studio, I think can have the more. You don't have to follow the industry standard, if that makes sense. Because again, I don't think we saw many other channels or big studios following Nickelodeon's foot fetish.
Oh no, you do. You just haven't looked it up. The reality is like you're asking me, am I following standards that YouTube themselves have been putting in place, or any other network has been put into place. And so it's like a moral grandstanding perspective of like, do you as an individual feel like you have this responsibility? It's like it's a Your Mama channel. The nature of Your Mama jokes in of themselves are not meant for kids. They're not. I mean, that's like going back to MTV in the early 2000s and being like, are you producing this Your Mama show and uploading it or having it air on TV after school so you can get like a school audience? It's like, no, the nature of Your Mama joke, if you're a good parent, you wouldn't let your kids watch anything Your Mama related. Like, it's insults. They're pretty fucked up. It's not really meant for kids. Now, there has been things over the years where YouTube has done some weird content community guideline stuff where no one knew what they could get away with, whether or not you were allowed to curse, for example. And those guidelines cause a lot of people to kind of pull back and water down their content. And that did invite younger audiences, not because they wanted the younger audience, but because they're trying to follow these shifting guidelines that were changing every 6 months to a year. And ultimately for me, as a cartoon Your Mama brand, it's not meant for kids. It's meant for like people with really fucked up humor. And sometimes kids do have fucked up humor. But that's not the audience I want to go for.
I wouldn't say I'm stumped, but it's more of like going through all of like elementary school even. There's like Yo Mama jokes are a thing. It's like poopy jokes, right? So I just don't feel like we'll see eye to eye on that, on the framing of it. Because I wholeheartedly see the Yo Mama thing as children's jokes. It's just like poop jokes. It's all that. Sure, you can look back at old MTV where you would have like battle rappers that would go on and say things about people's moms. However, I guess let me ask this: how old are you, Zach?
36.
36. Okay, so you're about 10 years older than me. So when you were going through elementary school, so that would have been the late 90s,
My
or
elementary,
early 90s.
my shit was a little bit different than most people. I grew up in other countries, so I didn't grow up in the American culture system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Then maybe that's just a difference of perspective on it. Because again, going through elementary school for myself, Yo Mama jokes were like a normal thing you would make to your friends. And again, your channel came out, I think, around when I was finishing middle school.
2011.
Yeah, that would have been like early middle school then. So it's like it predates even your channel, like the Yo Mama jokes being like normalized at like a children's level. Again, I can't say that again, like the cultural differences there at that point, like early 2000s, me being like first to third grade, even making Yo Mama jokes with my friends.
I mean,
So
shit. First time I got internet, I was like maybe 12 years old, and one of the first things I looked up was Your Mama jokes.
then yeah. So like again, I'm not trying to paint you as like evil man, but I think there is some what is it, like realization or like some sort of like being able to reflect, like self-reflection that can be had to realize, okay, there is like this joke that is like a cornerstone of children's humor nowadays, alongside the cool S, right? Both of those things side by side for young kids.
Yeah, so
There's just part of
I want to ask you a
reflection where you
question.
can see that like this.
Well, I'm curious.
You can go ahead, though.
Are you familiar with the history of Your Mama jokes, like where they actually came from?
Again, I pointed out the use of it because you pointed out MTV, and I associate that
But
with
like,
like battle rappers and everything.
but do you know like where it comes from, like the traditional Your Mama joke?
I guess I can't. Again, I've seen like battle raps, and that's like old ones too, where again that's a predominant reference.
Okay, so the history of like the modern day Your Mama joke, where like Your Mama is part of the setup, is part of African culture back in the barbershop days of like Harlem. So basically, you had like these older black men that were like sitting around and they're just like roasting each other's moms all day. And I believe that went all the way back to 1930s, give or take. And then Your Mama jokes were more popularized through a TV program called In Living Color. It was kind of like a different version of Saturday Night Live, but it was more like Eddie Murphy and like Jim Carrey. And they had
Yeah.
this segment called Dirty by the Dozen. And so your mama jokes became popular through that segment back in the early '90s. And then basically what happened was you had like these older men, these fathers, if you will. That's how I was introduced to your mama jokes. Was like my stepfather grew up on In Living Color and started telling these your mama jokes because he loved the TV show. And so it's one of those things where it's a very immature sense of humor. Like it's just not refined, right? It's not meant to be like sit around and you have like the cream of the crop of like knowledge of pop culture and you can talk about it adequately. It's more so like how a bunch of like dumb dudes would just like tell jokes that they found funny because they were immature. And when you deal with immature jokes, you definitely invite like a younger audience to participate in that joke, right? But and I don't disagree with what you're saying. It's one of these like Ouroboros situations where like the snake eats its own tail, where the joke in of itself is so immature that kids can easily latch onto it and they want to make fun. And when you're younger, one of the first things you learn to do is learn how to insult people. That's really what you see like in a lot of American school systems or school in general. And so you have the situation where it's immature. You got like a father has immature humor. He introduces that immature humor to a kid. The kid latches onto it even earlier, sooner than the father did, and then it's like created the situation where I was in. Like, yeah, I'm a 12-year-old and I'm researching your mama jokes. I think they're fucking funny. I'm watching MTV Yo Mama, where they're like saying like the most outrageous racy shit possible, and as you start to like produce an Your Mama animated series on YouTube, you definitely get like a younger audience that's going to leave more comments than an older audience. And again, it's an
Well,
Ouroboros
yeah,
situation.
it's a layered thing too at that point. I don't want to loop topics, but again, then you're throwing on like, uh, you know, child pop culture characters on top of it with animation. I don't want to loop back to that topic, but I'm saying it becomes layered at that point of like the appeal for children to watch it.
Yes and no, because that's a big issue right now happening with YouTube is that you have a lot of YouTube animation channels that are dealing with an AI moderation system that looks at their cartoons, and because of like
Yeah,
the
because
colors they
you'll
use.
mark it as like not for kids, and then it'll be like, oh, this content is for kids. You lied, and then fuck
No,
them
not
over,
even.
right?
I'm not even talking about myself. I'm talking about like other YouTube animation channels that are straight up not for kids, but because they are cartoons, they are getting like falsely categorized as like family content. Or like when
Yeah, yeah. I remember
YouTube
seeing tweets about that
and
where
when
people were
YouTube
calling it out because they automatically got set to kids content.
exactly, or like when YouTube followed the Kappa situation, I actually had to go back to YouTube and be like, hey, I do have videos that are more for kids and they're marked for kids. And I just want to let you know, like, I have to go through and like mark these as for kids content. And they're like, okay, well, just so you know, like, our system does not recognize Yamama as anything for kids. We consider it like mature adult humor. So there is like an internal system over at YouTube where they do see our channel by the theme of itself as being a more mature content situation. And then we had to give them data or feedback to let them know, like, hey, just so you know, you are missing content that we're clearly marking are for kids. They don't have the curse words, they don't have any of the sex jokes. These are things that parents can like set up for the younger members of their family to watch. And so, like when you're sitting there working with a platform that looks at your content as not being child friendly content, and then you have to like go out of your way to market as child friendly, it kind of shows or better demonstrates the situation where you're in, where you're like, yeah, like I'm not making content for kids, but there are moments where I pull that content aside. It's safer for children to watch. And then YouTube doesn't even want to recognize that because it is a Yamama joke. And they're like, well, Yamama joke in of itself is more mature. You kind of find yourself in this weird situation where you realize it doesn't matter what I do. It's like on one hand, YouTube is always going to look at my content as mature. And on the other hand, I'm always going to have like younger audiences watching my content, regardless of how I try to market.
Well, yeah, I think because again, I feel like we'll keep looping on that topic of it, so I don't even want to loop back to it of the again the inclusion of kids characters, whatever. But I guess that is just like a future like impact question of, do you see yourself, I guess, when part two of Yo Mama finally comes out, um, do you see yourself still including like characters from children's media at that point?
No,
Okay.
no. Matter of fact, we
Because
are
again, like big things that stuck out to me again was seeing like the children's character, even like again, Bugs Bunny's an old character. However, Big Chungus was like topical with young ages, right, at the time. So like Big Chungus twerking, like again, I would align that if it was just Bugs Bunny. Sure, that would be aligned with the whole argument of like Bob the Builder, SpongeBob, older stuff. Um, but again, it was like Big Chungus topical meme, right, amongst kids. So stuff like that being included in the future. If that isn't being included, then I think that solves like a big part of my issues that I have.
yeah, no, I would say, I mean, the Big Chungus thing is like such a weird thing because it comes from Looney Tunes, and Looney Tunes is like such an adult sexual innuendo type thing. I mean, they literally have like shorts on like having bigger butts. They deal with violence. I mean, Looney Tunes is what led to
Well, yeah, again, but the part of it being Big Chungus though, which it again was a predominantly like children meme. I think that also came out when I was in high school. Um,
again,
so
that would require like, so when you say like it's predominantly for children, I have no research or data that shows that, right? I'm just going off of you and your perspective. For me, it's
like
an internet
being
meme.
someone that grew up during that time. Yeah, yeah, it's an internet meme, but being someone that grew up in that time, seeing like, oh, Big Chungus, oh, he's such a Chungus, like all throughout high school, like I died pretty fast, but like that
Yeah, and
was
I
like
grew up
a
on porn in
widespread
high
thing.
school. Doesn't mean porn was made for kids. You know, it's like, yeah, you grew up on something in high school doesn't mean it's a high school thing. It's just what you dealt with as like a teenager trying to see themselves in as an adult. And you know, look, memes are obviously going to have like a wide demographic for things. But to kind of answer the main point of the question, yeah, there are 10 jokes that I am currently producing. And my direction on that was I really want to take it back to volume one. I want it to be quicker, snappier, more like insults. And I don't want to touch on third party IPs. I really want them to be a little bit more timeless. Um,
Leaning more into like the Yo Mama cinematic universe, right?
yes and no. I mean, like, I kind of understand the question you're asking, but like, it's more so
Yeah,
the
that part's a joke. That's a joke question, like
yeah,
the Yo Mama cinematic universe, but like
yeah,
original characters overall. I understand your point.
yeah.
So, um, let me see. Um, yeah, I think a lot of it boils down. Like as you said, I don't think we agree on the earlier part. I think it's a matter of perspective. Um, so I don't think it'll change your mind on like those past stances. Um, Also to like another side of it, I like again, I'm not trying to get you in a gotcha, man. It's more on a personal level, but you have, I feel like, giving a solid stance on it being not harmful, but viewed by like children and everything. I do think you have some to lose that, so I can understand some responses. Like it gets to an extent where I can't tell if it's like a corporate answer, like to protect the studio, or if it is more on like a personal, what is it? Not opinion, but personal like beliefs. So,
Yeah. No, I'll
um,
shoot straight with you. Like I'm a pretty like I'm on the spectrum, right? And so I don't think in words, I think in patterns and colors. Um, and so whenever I talk to somebody, it's definitely some sort of translation involved. And I try to be very careful with my words because I do care about communication. And a lot of what I'm saying does come from like years of already processing this, right?
okay,
Uh,
that's fair.
yeah.
So I have like a few rapid fire questions, and then I think that's it for me. Um, So first, I'm gonna say, you brought up talking to Himpleton. The Lego orgy wasn't your idea. That was something that was added in by Red. And then you're like, well, we think it's okay enough to put it in. However, it seemed like something that you're still uncomfortable with. Why wouldn't you just cut it out? I guess at that point.
Reflecting back on the conversation I had with Alex is one of those things that like, okay, you actually put time and effort into this. Like this wasn't just like I mean, we're paying for it, right? To the extent. And it's like, okay, well, you're looking at it and you go, okay, it's pretty mature, but it's like, will YouTube actually accept this? And the fact that they like monetize it and use it and promote it on their homepage will like kind of threw us off. So part of it comes down to, okay, I didn't ask for it. This is not what I was looking for, but it's here. Can we push the envelope?
Okay. No, I mean, you already can assume how I would think about just leaving it in anyways, based off our prior conversations. I think it should have been cut out. Because I don't want to assume, but was Red paid a flat rate or were they paid like hourly, I guess, for the amount of time they put into a project versus like, or were you just like, hey, we need this scene made, we'll pay you this much for the scene?
At that time, it was paid off the work that he did.
Okay. So was he already paid for that scene, like for that whole scene that included the Lego orgy scene?
He included his hours into the invoice.
Okay. I guess at some point, I guess it's more so being charitable on your end, but like from my perspective, I wouldn't be like, hey, we didn't ask for this. Why would we pay you for doing this? So that's my viewpoint on it, and I guess why didn't you go that direction with it?
Yeah, no, I think it's a very fair viewpoint. Let's see here. When did that happen? That happened back in maybe 2013 or 14.
Okay.
So over 10 years ago. So I can only like fill in the gaps on what I can remember. And then at that point,
Yeah, understandable.
it also comes down to the idea like you kind of grow up and you look back on things and you're like, shit, I could have done that better. I could have handled that better.
So like again, yeah, you said that was 13, 14, so about let's say 12 years ago. Is that something like in hindsight you would have not done again? Like
No.
you would have addressed it like, hey man, like yeah, we need this taken out, or I'm not going to pay you for doing this work. We didn't ask you to do that.
I mean, I would have probably asked if there's a way that we could have added it. It's like, yeah, I'd be happy to
Made
pay
it-
for a little extra work if you could just like make this less graphic.
Okay. Well, because comparing that to what you were saying with in Soviet Russia, Dog Walks Youth joke, and how you had him go back and make like the characters normally dressed instead of BDSM gear. How far between were those two videos?
Oh God, like
In
over a
terms of-
decade, like a decade.
Oh, really? So Soviet Russia joke was a lot newer.
Yeah, that particular
Oh,
example
okay.
is a lot newer. Yeah.
Okay. So you'd say like more so you'd become like more firm in how like you ran things. Okay.
Well,
That makes sense.
I try to get better.
I still don't agree with you putting it out. I would say again, I still don't agree with you putting it out. But you know, I'll be charitable and say there's a clear indication that you did adjust to like being like, hey, this isn't appropriate. Let me not add it in. So let's see. Oh, we already talked about that. So it was pointed out to me, like the Keemstar video. So and to clarify, so that one wasn't fully uploaded to YouTube, correct? That's when
No.
you had to put on Newgrounds.
Yeah.
So you uploaded like a trailer for it to YouTube, and then from what I was sent a screenshot of, you then did link to your Newgrounds.
Yeah, but Newgrounds, you have
which
to
I
like,
think,
in that particular situation, you have to like be like, yeah, I'm 18 years old. Like the way it's set up as a rating on Newgrounds, you have to put in your birth date, or you have to agree that you're 18.
well, I will be 100% transparent as like a young teen. Like my Newgrounds account when I was like 14 was saying it was 18.
Oh God, you should go to jail for
They-
that.
Yeah, terrible. I'm a terrible human for that. However, the point being is easily accessible, but outside of that one, because I can put it into the same bucket as the I'm Alex Mimulus thing. What sort of like indication or direction did you give for the I'm Alex Mimulus one then, if any, through your main channel, or I guess through your social medias in general?
I think I understand the question you're asking, but can you try it one more time?
Okay, so showing that you had found a different means, because you mentioned earlier that you could have uploaded the I'm Alex Mimulus video to Newgrounds, it just wasn't something you had explored yet. So that's why with Keemstar video, you decided to put on Newgrounds instead of Pornhub.
Yeah.
So with that being said, you directed people to the Keemstar one on Newgrounds. So I'm asking, was there any clear direction you gave viewers to where they could find the Mimulus I'm Alex one that would have directed them to the like the Pornhub like link for it?
There was no direct link to the Pornhub one.
Okay. Was there any trailer you did on YouTube for the I'm Alex one? Or I'm Alex Munoz one?
I don't think I did a trailer. I could be wrong, but I don't think I did a trailer. I just made a video talking about the fact that we made that video.
Like on the Yo Mama channel?
Yeah. But that
Okay.
was like a longer video, and then that mentioned the video at the very end of that video.
So was that in the longer video, was it still a full animated one, or was it just you guys talking?
Just me talking.
Okay. Again, I guess looping back to that, like, do you see that as like somewhat irresponsible to direct, or I guess yeah, direct, because you're saying this thing's a thing, so if people go out of their way to find it, obviously the only place at the time that it was at was on Pornhub. I think now it's been deleted off Pornhub, from what I saw, but it's archived on Memulus's.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I will also say, like, blanket, like, that's also irresponsible. I think Memulus, I'm Alex also had like a very like child fan base, or like older teen, like high school age fan base. So I think that's also irresponsible. So I just to that point of it, I guess is that one of those things that, like, looking back, like, hey, maybe I shouldn't have directed viewers to this video that's, you know, only on a porn site.
I think I understand what you just asked. Can you ask me that one more time?
So looking back on it, do you think it was irresponsible for you to direct your viewers, not even direct, but mention, like, if you're talking to your viewers, and mentioning this content, obviously they're going to go try to find it. Well, if these viewers find the video, it's obviously going to be on Pornhub at the time. So do you believe it's irresponsible to, sure, indirectly guide your viewers to Pornhub to watch a video?
I followed
Again,
YouTube's terms of service and community guidelines at the time, and we didn't show the video in that video. And when you acknowledge, like, yeah, this is a pretty intense video, that's the only place we could upload it. I mean, talking about it,
well,
it's
I'm just
kinda
asking
one
on
of
a
these-
personal level. But I'm not asking like terms of service. I'm not asking like corporate for the sake of the studio. I'm just asking on a personal level.
But as a personal,
Do you think
but on a personal level, that's how I operate. You know, I operate within the confines of the guidelines and rules given to me. Now, would I do that again? No, I wouldn't do it again. I would do it a little bit more. I don't know. It's one of those situations where, like, again, you don't want new mama jokes to be for kids, and you're like, you know, let me use a situation for like some really fucked up humor, and then you're like, okay, well, you have a kid audience that watches you. Are you responsible for X, Y, Z? And you're like, yeah, bro, I don't really want to have a kid's audience. So at some point, you do create content to where you're like, okay, just so you're clear, like, you as a kid, you're not supposed to watch this shit. And you're like, okay, well, aren't you responsible for exposing them to X, Y, and Z? Look, if I was like a guy running Adult Swim, that'd be a whole different thing, right? Because I know my primetime spots, I know my hours, I know what I'm working with. I'm working with TV standards, I'm working with safety human teams, which we done with anime rap battles. Like, we went through like this process before. And you're asking me on a personal level? On a personal level, I would never let a kid watch YouTube, period. Like, kids should not be on social media. That's like, if I was going to shoot straight with you, that's my line. The kids should not be touching social media.
Okay, here, 1 second. So just to circle back. So did you mention where the video could be found, or no, to what you remember?
The
Like
Meaningless
what
video?
site? Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Like, it's a bad
Yeah,
video.
it's on
It's on
Pornhub.
Pornhub. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Don't. Yeah. Again, I think at the end of the day, I think our conversation boils down to a difference of perspectives. I still see it as like, I'll be very blunt. I don't think you changed my perspective on how I view it, like how your earlier content was conducted. However, I can at least appreciate that you going forward aren't going to include these third-party IPs or like child IPs in your
Yeah.
content, along with you know, some of the bad practices you made. I will say, I sure statistically there's a lot that I can't just throw at you and back up claims. However, I do think there is at least some responsibility to be had and to hold accountability for when it comes to having that kind of content with very obvious sexual references. Not like a small joke in a SpongeBob episode that, like, you have to get into the weeds to understand it's a sexual reference, versus again just some of the over sexualized characters and everything. And I do want to point out too, when it comes to this, it's not just you. I can look at Red and say the same thing. Because into looking into this, right, before I called in, like I can point out on, Twitter, because correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like the character that Red has in his banner is one that is in your videos. Am I correct on that? It kind of looks like the slime mama or whatever, or the slimy mama.
I'm
But
not
it is
familiar with this banner, but I will say like it is
I
true.
can
Like
copy
you
his
deal
banner
with
and send it.
yeah, send it over. I will say there's like definitely been situations where I've had creatives like over sexualize characters in a way that I wasn't personally comfortable with,
I just sent it.
or I wasn't even aware like they're. Yeah, so that's like his thing. It's not this.
Okay.
Yeah, and
It
so
looks
funny
very
enough-
similar, so that's why I had to ask. So
No, what's so funny is he actually suggested the slimy mom, and I had no idea what the fuck he was talking about. Um, he's like, let's do this slimy mother, etc., etc. And then I learned over time, like, oh, this is like some sort of weird sexual, like, Rule 34
personal
thing. But,
fetish
like,
of his.
I don't think it's a personal fetish of his. I think he's just kind of making a joke. And
Okay.
I can't speak for him, but I didn't know it was like a fetish thing
So,
in general.
but the point with that is like I can point to him having, again, you have final authority for the channel, what gets uploaded. So I think overall with what's on the Yo Mama channel, I do think a lot of that responsibility is on your shoulders when it comes to it. However, like, man, I'll be 100% charitable for you. Like, it seems like Red also made a lot of this stuff. And then on personal platforms, which to my knowledge, you credited your animators, you credited your artists, directing them to these people. And Red himself also has sexualized content on his public page. It's directed. They could, users could find from your content or from the Yo Mama content directly. So like, I'm not gonna sit here and say you're evil, and 100% at fault. I think you hold most responsibility, but I do not think it is all on your shoulders. And I think Red is very trying to be dismissive of it, put it all onto you. So I'll give you that, man.
Yeah, just kind of add on to it because I don't really disagree with what you're saying. It's just such a gray area, and the only way I can like show like fine lines being drawn is like I know Paw Patrol is strictly like preschool bullshit. Never want to touch that. Could have gotten a lot of use for it. When you deal with things like Five Nights at Freddy's and Baldi's Basics, it's a little bit of a boomer thing where you're like, okay, you don't really know what the fuck it is, but you know, like it has like a vast demographic behind it, like Minecraft does. Like I know what Minecraft is, I play with it, but like I'm an adult, and that's also like a kid thing too. And then I look back at like my own personal life and I go, well, I grew up on Adult Swim, Robot Chicken, Aqua Teen Hunger Force, where they took like like C Lab 2021. They took a lot of things I grew up as a kid and they turn it to adult stuff because it repurpose animation cells. And it gets into this like really tricky thing of like, oh, it's bright and colorful. And because of that, it does attract kids. Like that's just what it is. It's like a fucking McDonald's sign. Golden arches and all that shit. But at the end of the day, like my main goal is just make good Yo Mama jokes and not be tied down to an algorithm or just follow trends, which I did in the past. And I think by following those trends and listening to like a lot of those comments, because that's what we did, we animated comments, we end up having like a lot of younger stuff introduced into it. And I never realized like just what that demographic was 100%. Things I knew, I drew a line at. Things I didn't know, I assumed. But moving forward, like as a Yo Mama content producer, I just want to make like really fucked up Yo Mama jokes that kids are not supposed to tell.
Yeah,
that's my
and
humble
I
perspective.
think that's fair. Yeah, again, when you're mixing children's IPs, I feel like what that's doing is, again, as you said, it's attracting that audience, and then your style of content is then like pretty much the memification of sexual topics to them. So to an extent, it's normalizing like sexual topics to these children. And like, yeah, sure, like as a kid, I was making sexual jokes, or like teenager, right? Once I learned what that stuff was, but it's really just a matter of like doing your part to make sure that, like, again, it's not being normalized as a joke, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and
So,
that's where it's
but
kind of
it
fucked
seems
up
like
because
we've
like
reached an understanding.
no, I like this conversation so much because like I think one of the biggest issues that we deal with is platform responsibilities and whether or not they the thing is like a lot of these like you look at Roblox, right? They have like a big predatory behavior problem, and what they're doing is they're trying to use AI moderation to keep it cheap, but to solve that issue. And these are things that are not being properly regulated. So it's one of these situations where you're like, yo, I'm on a platform. I'm an older person. I want to create content that's more for my demographic or surrounding demographic. And then you realize like these platforms do not have proper systems in place, right? It kind of comes down to like YouTube. It's like YouTube's like, okay, well, if you're not family friendly, you're not getting ads. Okay, well, I'm not trying to be family friendly. I'm trying to cater to like a slightly more mature audience. And when you look at the way they moderate things, it kind of forces you to strip back certain elements of your humor or elements of your content that would make it easier to clearly say like, yo, my content is not for kids. And that's kind of the shitty thing with animation because like we don't really get that platform. Like Newgrounds is pretty solid, but you can argue like anyone can go on Newgrounds, lie about their age, look at some really fucked up shit, play a fucking school shooting game like Pico's school shooting, whatever it's called. Pretty fucked up game. But like if you're an adult and you're enjoying it, that's just who you are. The thing is like the internet makes everything accessible to everybody, and then you as a content creator find yourself in a place where like you feel like you have more responsibility than the platforms themselves. And really what you want to do is just create the content that you want to create and know what guidelines you can follow and hope that the platform does it best to like give you the demographic that you're actually trying to reach.
Yeah, no, and again, I think that's fair. Like, obviously, AI moderation is terrible, and it's going to be like it's gonna miss a lot, more than like the human eye looking over something. And yeah, I guess personally, I want to point this out too, um, that Midge Matic put in chat, pointing out that putting sexualized thumbnails out there of these characters, um, again, there's the ones that Red put in the doc, but I know there's other ones as well. Um, do you think that kind of contributes to some sort of issue when it comes to, I guess, and obviously you're one channel out of, that's thousands, hundreds of thousands, right, putting out sexualized thumbnails. But do you think that attributes to that, like, that issue that YouTube has of having to have some sort of VAT or mass moderation to that issue?
I'm telling you, their moderation tools don't catch it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But like, if they're investing more and more time into that, like I feel like it's contributing to an issue.
No, the issue is that okay, so YouTube recognizes Your Mama as a mature channel. That's just the way their backend data runs. It's a thing that has limited our reach since COVID. So they go like, Your Mama is a mature term. You as a mature content channel are not going to be promoted further than what we're going to promote you beyond. So like they cut down our potential reach by like 80%. What they're doing is they're like going to people that are like strictly like Roblox channels, for example. They're like, okay, you're just nothing but a Roblox creator. Roblox has like a mostly younger audience type of thing. We know what you're trying to do. And so what they're doing is they're targeting channels that are hyper focused on things that do have a larger kids demographic. And they look at a channel like ours and they're like, okay, well, you're Your Mama. Your Mama's not for kids. We don't give a shit. So like what I'm doing doesn't matter because they've already moderated my shit from like a channel SEO perspective or terminology perspective. Whereas they're looking at things that can slip in from a channel terminology perspective or SEO perspective. And they're like, okay, well, you're creating I don't know, let's say you're making like fucking Roll24 Paw Patrol videos. No one would think to like have to moderate the term Paw Patrol, but then you start to look at the content and you're like, okay, well there's some weird shit in here. So there's like layers of moderation to it. And YouTube's auto moderation already recognizes the channel as mature.
I suppose to an extent, like during that, I went on to YouTube on a incognito tab, not logged in, and one of your top videos, 100 new jokes not for kids. I'm able to see her watch with no age restriction. Again, I don't know the content of the video, so I can't point at it and say that this has stuff that a kid could watch and it's evil. But the title does say not for kids.
Yeah, but just because it's not for kids
it's
doesn't
not
mean
labeled mature.
age. Yeah, but age restriction is a whole different category versus not being for kids, believe it or not. And that's where you start to get in like tricky terminology with like YouTube's community guidelines. I only had like 2 videos ever marked for like 18 plus under the Yo Mama channel of like 1,000, 2,000. I upload it, give or take. So yeah, no, like if there's something in there that YouTube does not like and they feel like it breaks community guidelines, they would let me know because their systems are there to catch that, and they will catch it.
Okay, so you're saying if it's something that's genuinely mature, that's where they would actually go in and put the banner that says, "Hey, you need to log in to verify you're of age to watch this."
Exactly. So I'll give an example. That Lego orgy scene was, according to YouTube for a long time, totally safe for YouTube. And then one year they updated their terms of service or community guidelines, and they're like, okay, yeah, you can't include content like this anymore without it being age restricted.
And what is the specific video name for the one that has the Lego orgy in it? It's like the Lego one, or Yo Mama's So Short, right?
Yeah, your mom's a short Lego.
Let's see. Yo Mama's So Short Legos. Well, there's Lego and Legos.
Let's see here.
We have one with an S. One's 8 years ago and one's 11 years ago.
Yeah, the one that's 11 years ago would be the first upload.
Okay. So is the point you're making that it won't get recommended to children? Is that the point you're making? Because again, this is one of those things I can still open it here, not logged in or anything.
Yeah, so like YouTube is just not going to recommend our content unless like you watch Yo Mama content.
Is the one from 8 years ago just is it a compilation or is it removed the orgy?
Let's see here. 8 years
It
ago.
is,
that would be
45 seconds is
that's a
okay. The
compilation.
Legos is 40. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
I do want to point out the most watched part of the video is the orgy. That's absurd. Like the bell graph that shows where like most people watch and skip to.
Yeah.
That's funny. But yeah, I think that's really all I got, man. I thank you for listening to my criticism. As you said, as time's gone on, you've talked or you've thought about it. You mentioned that earlier. It's something you've looked back on, something you've thought about. So again, I really can't hit that more. I'm not gonna sit here and like tell you a piece of shit, whatever.
But I am.
But
a
again,
piece of shit. Tell me more, Daddy.
You're terrible, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, So again, thank you for the time, man. I think Hamilton has a lot more to go over with the stock, so
Well, not a lot.
I don't
but
want to take
we
up
still have the
any more of
crypto
his
stuff.
time.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this Lego scene, and I'm just like, naked Legos don't matter, but like if we had covered up a little bit more, I feel like it would have been better.
For sure. Again, overall, I do not think it is. The whole thing is just too fucking absurd.
Yeah.
But
I'm trying to figure out the horse mask.
I
guess it's like
the Lego horse head.
Yeah, I guess it's like horseplay. Yeah, I could see where like she's leaning in trying to grab some dick. No nips. A lot of shine on the butt. Yeah, no, this could have been toned down a few different ways and still been kept. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud. I can't believe we ever uploaded this.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
But yeah, again, thank you, Zach. And yeah, Hamilton, if you have anything else for me, I'm
Yeah, thank you, Ina. I did have a question in chat that was a dono, so I should just go ahead and ask you. Did you ever set up your Streamlabs, buddy?
No, and I don't plan on it.
Okay. All right, get out of here, buddy.
Look. Little shill. Okay, and 200 more subs, I can get donations on my own shit. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're all
200
excited.
subs on what?
He has a channel.
YouTube. I got like 300 subs, so like 200 more, I can get donos on my own shit. A little shill for iNut. Okay, that's what I'm doing.
All right.
So everybody
right.
loves iNut.
Everybody sub to iNut.
Again, thank you, Zach.
Thank
Thank you, Zach, and I'll see you later, Hamilton.
All right. Thanks for coming, buddy. Okay. All right, Zach. Thank you for doing all that. I appreciate it. I think that was a good conversation. Do you need another break before we go on?
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
That's totally
Shit.
fine. I need to take a piss,
Yeah.
so we're totally
Alright,
lined up
cool.
on that one. All
Are
right.
you gonna take